Business Breakfast is brought to you by Courts Business Solutions.
All right, everybody, and we will get into that segment very, very shortly. But before we do that, a number of things happening in Trinidad and Tobago. One of them, and I did speak about not too many untoward incidents happening over the carnival and so on. Well, I'm seeing that last weekend, right? So there were 4 murders over the weekend. 4 men were killed in separate incidents between Friday night and Sunday. The most recent incident is the shooting death of a 54-year-old butcher whose body was found in the yard of his home early yesterday morning. All right? So I suspect when I spoke about carnival, these incidents are not carnival related, right? They occurred over the weekend. So, things are still happening. And I think that sometimes the conversation is, how could these things be still happening in the middle of a state of emergency, right? All right, but we'll see how things go. And we can only hope that things continue to improve. All right, so we are moving on, and we're speaking now about World NGO Day. Of course, we do have on the line this morning Ardeen Serju, Communications Lead of the Cropper Foundation. Ardeen, good morning. Ardeen, you're hearing me?
Yes, I'm hearing you. Are you hearing me?
Yeah, I'm hearing you. Ardeen, looking good after the carnival, girl. I know you love the festival, So.
Well, unfortunately, I can't see you.
Yeah? All right. Well, we'll try to address that. But here's what. Let's speak about this World NGO Day. What's the message this morning, Ardeen?
Well, World NGO Day, I should let everyone know, was commemorated and is commemorated every year on the 27th of February. Of course, we have a belated commemoration this year in Trinidad and Tobago due to our carnival celebrations. We don't want to compete with carnival. But for the past 4 years, the Cropper Foundation, through our CSO Go Digital Hub, we have been hosting a virtual commemoration. And of course, that would have started during COVID. And the idea was to really find ways to bring our community of civil society actors and organizations together, especially in a time where we couldn't gather physically. And what we found is that this space has actually had a lot of traction over the years. It's a space people look forward to coming to, not just to be in community, which is extraordinarily valuable in and of itself, but also because it's an opportunity to share knowledge, to learn from each other, to upgrade skills. We always look forward to doing that. One of the things we try to focus on, in addition to building solidarity, is sharing knowledge and tools with each other. How can we elevate the sector? How can we use this opportunity with this audience to really speak about issues affecting the way we do our work and how we can do it better? So that's one of the focal points. And this year, it's particularly special because we have chosen to sort of reconfigure our theme this year, which is securing our space. It's SOS. Securing our space, uniting for civic resilience. And what that really reflects is, well, there are 2 things. One is the geopolitical climate, which we are responding to. I don't think it's something we can turn a blind eye to, and the sort of impacts on civic space that we're seeing in other parts of the world where rights are being rolled back. We just have to look to the north. I don't need to go into too much detail. All the evidence is there on social media and mass media, Marlon. So the idea is to really underscore the importance protecting that space here in Trinidad and Tobago, and of course the wider region. As much as we may think that what is happening in the US and other parts of the world are just isolated there, we know they are not. The reality is that those issues are like contagions. They do spread. And we have to be on guard for that. And also the fact that many of our organizations locally have already been impacted by funding cuts, for instance, through the disbanding of USAID, and the fact that priorities are shifting in the US. And so that has impacts for how organizations here work. So those are some of the things we're focusing on while we continue to emphasize the development of the sector, so that workshops continue to be a big part of what we do. Discussions of the need, for instance, in an election year, for us to mobilize. And by mobilize, we don't mean politicizing the civil society space or the NGO sector, but really, how do we create space for our voices in this national discourse around issues that affect us? Yeah. You know, why do we think that we have to defer to the politicians to shape that conversation? We're saying that as partners in development, we have a stake in that conversation. We have access, we have the data, we are interacting with the people who are in many cases vulnerable to a lot of the threats being experienced in our country. And so we have a definite right and responsibility to speak up in an election year and to hold those who are seeking office and those who are seeking to retain office, not just to account, but to ask them some hard questions. So I know that's a mouthful. I'll leave it there for now, Marlon.
Thank you very much, Hardin. All right, we are now joined by Amilcar Sanatan, World NGO Day keynote speaker and Caribbean artist, educator, and activist. Amilcar, thank you very much for joining us this morning. We do appreciate it.
Good morning.
Yes. All right, so let's get right into further into this discussion. What's your message? Because I'm seeing here that you're the World NGO Day keynote speaker. What's your message this morning?
Well, I'm here to share the voices of other people who have done brilliant work in Trinidad and Tobago historically. People who are in small spaces. I'm trying to think small. For World NGO Day, let us look at seamstresses in small studios who are working on ensuring that people could have access to affordable school uniforms. What possibilities of civic space are there when they create that? When we have young people looking at a room in their house, turning that into a studio, writing songs and being cultural producers for our national culture. What spaces are possible? What politics could we have? And as Ardeen spoke earlier about the politics that we make in everyday life, a manifesto does not belong, or there's no monopoly on manifesto making anywhere in the world or to a political organization. Anyone could demand what is their vision or future for development. So I'm going to look at the work people are doing every day, small organizations, small cultural groups, small economic actors who show us the large possibilities for civic space.
And you know, Ardeen, you spoke about being a part of the conversation because, you know, I think that there may be the perception in Trinidad and Tobago, because when we speak about NGOs, we usually speak about small organizations, but you think that there is a real respect for the NGO in Trinidad and Tobago, and they are seen as real stakeholders, and that they do have a voice, a serious voice at the table?
I would say that the perception is shifting positively, Marlon. I think we are seeing a shift from the traditional sense of, you know, these are do-gooders. These are people who volunteer. Maybe they've retired. Maybe they don't have much to do, or they have the comfort to be able to go out and spend time differently. I think we're seeing a shift from that to appreciating that we are active partners in development. Yeah, I mean, we see it in the way that our funders and the stakeholders we engage with, whether they be from the state itself or independent actors or international actors, we see it in the way that they approach us. We feel that as we work more closely with state organizations and with private sector, we think that it's really a lack of understanding, and the more closely we work together, I think there's a greater opportunity to bridge that gap in understanding. So we don't understand how they work. We don't understand, you know, what it means to be profit-driven a lot of the time. And so it's really important to come together, to work together, to understand what each person is after, and to see how we can help each other meet our goals. Sometimes we are working against each other, you know, unknowingly. And I think that's also the reason why we have to work more closely together. But I do think that there is a growing tendency to see us as active stakeholders and partners in this work of development.
Yeah, Amilcar, I want your perspective on that too, because you did speak about some of the small persons in society. But I guess sometimes the small people in society feel that they just don't have a voice. Speak about the importance of those small voices to speak out on big issues.
Yeah, so people from Trinidad and Tobago and the Caribbean should always appreciate the small. That's a scale people neglect at the global level because of their geographic size or the size of the population. We ask, what is the purpose of supporting work in this region or specific territory or island? And when we think about small communities, our family from Forward Stamina, family from Lavantil, we have small communities. When you go in Port of Spain, every street is like a community. And what I see often are open mics. That is the beginning of a performer's career. We see people involved with fashion and doing tea parties, the audition grounds for talent, but we also see economic actors working in verandas and then moving into smaller plazas and then trying to get their way gradually up to Frederick Street. So small is not a problem, and I want to be real with you. Activists do a lot of work in this country. When we think about corporal punishment, who are the people? That imperative didn't come from the state, that came from people trying to say, this is a social belief we could transform. When people say that we needed workers and the breakfast shed, Audrey Jeffers did that important work, yes, but she was also a social worker in the coterie of social workers, which is where she really applied her strength of analysis around social inequalities that exist in Trinidad and Tobago. So we always need activists. When a child or a student gets discriminated for their hairstyle, furthermore, their religious preferences, but I'm talking about hairstyles. It's oftentimes civil society that steps into the fray. So we play a very important role around consumer rights, around thinking about public safety, and the choices we could make as a people because we fight for values of fairness, equality, and justice.
Yeah, and Adine, how do members of the public participate in the observances this year?
Sure. So today is actually day one. What we're doing is a 2 mornings event. So it's all online. You can go to csogo.tt/NGO Day 2025 /. Hopefully that's not too much for you to remember. But you can also just Google it, World NGO Day 2025, Trinidad and Tobago, the Proper Foundation, and you'll definitely find it. You register via Zoom, and that's it. You show up today, tomorrow, you get to hear Amilcar speak. I'm sure you're not surprised as to why we would choose him to be our keynote for this year. And interestingly, Amilcar, I'm not even sure if you know this, but this year's theme, the international theme for World NGO, is about empowering grassroots for sustainable development. And so we love that Amilcar is actually speaking to that theme, possibly unknowingly, and that we are going to be addressing over the 2 days, again, points for development within organizations, community groups. And when we say NGOs, it's like a catch-all term, right? Because we're talking about community-based organizations. They could be religious in affiliation. It doesn't matter what size the organization is. We're really talking about civil society. So we're talking about how we can use tools to make our work better, to make our work easier, because we need that too. And then on day 2 tomorrow, we have some panel discussions where we look at how we can amplify the opportunity that a general election provides us as civil society to come up with a kind of agenda to present to politicians, and as well as how do we mobilize more regionally? How do we work with our regional NGO partners to advance this work and to amplify this work? And then we'll also be huddling in little groups by themes to talk about how we put forward, like, you know, whether it's a 10-point plan, we don't know. It's really an experiment. We're creating a space for us to come up with what we think an agenda could look like for elections in Trinidad and Tobago, what the issues should look like.
Yeah, do people need to register? What time do they log on?
Yes, via Zoom. So when you click on that link, it takes you to a Zoom link to register, and it's CSOGO again, csogo.tt /NGO Day 2025 /.
Yeah. Amilcar, before you leave us this morning, is there anything else you'd like to put on the table?
Just reflect on the people who have sacrificed around you, the people who have worked overtime, the parents who got involved in schools because they wanted to improve not just the physical infrastructure, but the social infrastructure of that environment. All around us, people serve. I value them. I've seen it in faith-based organizations, Hindu women's organizations, St. Vincent de Paul, sport and cultural groups, as well as the more macro developmental-oriented NGOs. And I've had the privilege of working in all. Let us take today to celebrate this pathway to our personhood that we found through service with other people.
Yeah, Amilcar, Dean, thank you very much for speaking with us this morning, and thank you for your for the contributions that you continue to make to Trinidad and Tobago. Thanks again. Bye for now.
Thank you so much, Marlon.
Thank you.
All right, everybody, we are going to a very short break. We are coming back.
Business Breakfast was brought to you by Quartz Business Solutions.